Alright, second lesson for the week, and again your last lesson for this week, which means your quiz is going to be over 4.1 and 4.2, so make sure you master as much as you can so you are ready when these questions pop up at the end of the week. Today's lesson is focused on finding the solution to a quadratic equation. We know what a synonym is. It means words that mean the same thing. So smart, intelligent, genius, I don't know, I'm not great with that stuff, not whenever I'm just kind of throwing off the top of my head, but synonyms of solution are zero, root, and x-intercept. There will be a question that I purposely put on there that it's going to say, what is the solution? And you'll say something like 0, 5. And then it'll say, what is the 0? And you'll put 0, 5. And it'll say, what is the root? And you'll put 0, 5. And it'll say, what's the x-intercept? And you'll say 0, 5. So I'm trying my best on that question. I know it's going to get on your nerves, but I'm trying my best on that question to help you to attach this word to mean the same thing as these words. So, considering the options that are here, we should now know what a solution is. Which one of these words makes sense to us? It would be that one. So the solution to a quadratic equation is actually the x-intercept. In other words, it is what makes y equal 0. Alright, so if you had f of x equals x squared plus 2x minus 7, the solution will be found by simply putting 0 equals x squared plus 2x minus 7 and finding the values that actually make it equal 0. That is what a solution is, okay? We will focus on two methods today, considering the graph of a quadratic equation, which we should know is a parabola. Method 1 is to identify visually. So here's where it's going to say, what are the solutions of the graph? Well, here's the thing. It seems to cross right here at 2, 0. It seems to cross here at 4, 0. Or, again, it might say x equals 2 or x equals 4. Adjust to your homework. If you put this one and the computer marks you wrong because that's your answer, I'll let it go. If you answer this one but the computer says it wants that way, I will mark it right. But just make sure you work through your homework and kind of adjust to what you're doing on that. But again, that's part of the deal. But that's the solutions. They're visually, you can see this has two solutions there. The solutions to this one are at negative 4, 0 and at 2, 0. Now let me ask you something. What are the roots of this graph? Well, 2, 0, 4, 0. What are the zeros of this graph? 2, 0, 4, 0. What are the x-intercepts? 2, 0, 4, 0. That's the question that you're going to see where it's going to make you type in the same answer 4 times. Be patient with me. There is a method to my madness. I promise it will pay off eventually. Another type of question will say approximate the solutions. And so it's pretty much going to say, tell me about where the numbers are. And so what you want to do is always put the smaller number first, which means that when you go to approximate this one, this is between negative 1 and 0. And this is between 2 and 3. I think you actually use comma, so you'll put negative 1, 0 to say the first one's answer is between negative 1 and 0. You'll put 2, 3 to say the second answer is between 2 and 3. Again, just adjust to what the computer tells you. As long as you understand the concept, it'll be fine. But most of your zeros will not, or most of your solutions will not be nice numbers. Now, I picked this for a reason, because when it says approximate, it means it's not going to be a whole number. This obviously looks like it's hitting 5, but it's really not, because the 5 line is here and it moves just a little bit over. So this would be between negative 5 and negative 4, and that is between 0 and 1. So again, make sure the smaller number goes first, bigger number goes second, and that is how you answer that question. But visually it's not hard. My question for you is, what is the solution to this graph? And if the solution is where it crosses the x-axis, obviously there is no solution. You also have graphs to where the parabola touches the line, bam, and turns back around, and this would just have one solution, which is whatever this point is. But again, in a quadratic function, just so you know for when we start solving later, you could have one solution because it hits the line and turns around. You could have no solution because it doesn't touch the x-axis at all, or you could have two solutions because it actually hits it twice. So again, just keeping that in mind and kind of looking ahead so you'll be ready when we go. Method 2 is using a table of values, and yes, it's going to be a very, I won't say very, but it's going to be tedious a little bit, but it's to make sure that you can do it, and once I know you can do it, then you kind of move on from there. But if we're going to use a table of values, we will look for one of two things. The first thing we want to look for is where y equals 0, because remember, X-intercept, which is what solution is, means y equals 0. X-intercept means ignore y. We ignore y because it's 0. So if you're looking for the solutions on this, it would be at negative 4 comma 0. It would be at negative 2 comma 0. By the way, for proof, let's look back at the solutions that I put down for the other stuff and see what I had, which is 2 0 4 0 4 0 2 0. All these had zeros in them. So again, just kind of keep that in mind as you're going through it. But again, those are your solutions, those are your roots, those are your zeros, those are your x-intercepts, those are your two answers. But of course, I'm not going to give you these. You might have to use that, which is why I'm teaching it to you. Actually, you will have to use that, which is why I'm teaching it to you. The key thing is you'll need to be able to find your zeros or your solutions or approximate your solutions based off of tables like this. And I want you to pay attention to something as we look back at this question here, which is, notice that on this side of the solution, x is negative. On this side of the solution, x is positive. On this side of the solution, x is positive. On this side of the solution, x is negative. Same thing. Here's your 0. It's negative over here. I'm sorry, positive over here and negative over here. Here's your solution. It's negative on this side, positive on that side. So what we are looking for, if we're using a table of values to just kind of approximate where it should be, is we are looking for where y changes signs. Notice 2 turns to negative 1, which means there's got to be 1 here. Stays negative, switches over to be positive, which means there's got to be 1 here, stays positive. So there's your two zeros. So one of my zeros is between negative 2 and negative 1. The other 0 is between 1 and 2. And so when you answer that question, that's what they are looking for. Okay? The difference is you are going to have to make your table, and you're going to have to do some work, but I did program it so you don't have to like work yourself crazy. It just might take you a little bit longer in some than others, but again, this is your 136 class, which means that you should have the ability. Give me 1 second to try to fix this Zoom again. There we go. You should have the ability or the persistence to at least fight your way through this stuff. So the first option works only when 0 is an integer, or when the 0 is an integer, which means negative 4 and negative 2 are solutions, but in the other ones they're not. It's going to be a decimal somewhere between those things. Today's work is going to, in most general situations you expect to use a second option. Today's work will require you to make a table, but the problems are set up so that the answers can be found between negative 5 and 5, which means that when you go to check, don't go checking x equals negative 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and then positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope. All I need you to do is show me that you understand the concept of finding a 0 using a table. And so all I need you to do is literally find the 0 by using your calculator. And yes, I'm using a different one today because I want to make sure you understand that each calculator can still be used like that. So negative 5 is the lowest that I will take you. So I want to do parentheses negative 5 squared plus 2 parentheses negative 5 minus 9. And I get 6. So negative 5 leads me to the answer of 6. Now remember I told you that for the one that up arrow does it, it does on this also. It just doesn't let you copy it, and you just simply have to change your negative 5 to a negative 4. Guess what? There's 1 because I went from positive to negative. So I hit up. Still negative. And again, we should be finding 2 of these things. Actually, you can go up. You just have to find the one you're looking for. So anyway, negative 2 is negative 9. Negative 1 is negative 10. Still negative. Notice again we have negative, negative, negative. No sign changes yet, but I think based off of this that's probably the high point, which means I think we're going to work our way back down. I do hope we get back in time for 5, because that would be terrible if I lied to you. 0. Now here's the thing, and this is why I did it. 0 takes up one spot, but there are two characters inside, so this is where you want to learn to use the delete button, DEL, to take away one of those characters and just turn it to 0. Yep, looks like that's the vertex. So -9, which should be 0. I believe 1 will be -6 because I remember how parabolas work. I think 2 will be -1. I think 3 will be 6. Again, using what I know about parabolas, I remember that this vertex point, which is here, because that's where the number actually matched, and -9 matched -9, I think it'll work. But again, just to prove it to you, turn this into a 1. Notice that my answer was right, which is -6. Turn this into a 2. I get the -1. Turn this into a 3. And I get the answer of 6, which means there's my two parts. So you would answer this as between -5 and -4, and between 2 and 3. Those are your two answers. Again, I don't know, I forget how they do that because I programmed this thing about 2 weeks ago before we even got here. But again, if there's an issue, just email it to me and I'll discuss it with you and let you know. But I need you to be able to do that so you understand how zeros work. As soon as the sign switches, it means it had to have crossed the x-axis. If it crossed the x-axis, it means that you have found a 0 or a solution or x-intercept or a solution. I don't know which one I didn't say. It's hard to say all four, but that's the general idea. Alright, so again, B, approximate to 0, same thing. I'm going to do it with the one I like. Again, starting from -5, because I am just looking for sign shifts. So -5 would be parentheses -5 squared. And by the way, make sure you use parentheses, because if you just put -5 squared, and I love this thing whenever people ask me that question, but if you put -5 squared versus parentheses -5 squared, you are making a major mistake. So that's why I taught you, or try to teach you, to use parentheses all the time, even though you don't like the way I did it because it made you type it in. But it was to minimize that mistake whenever you actually get to working with that kind of stuff. Is that right? That is 25 minus, yeah, okay, so that is 3. I was just wondering because that's a y-intercept. No, it's not. It just canceled out. Sorry. I think a lot when I'm answering these things, and you want to start doing that for yourself because, again, you want to kind of use your common sense to guide you as you're going through this. Looks to me like one of them is here because I went from positive to negative. That's not a solution area. Interesting. So what that tells me is that this must be a turning point somewhere between here, which means since this matches this, chances are this is going to be -1. But again, that's just me using my common sense about a parabola, which is what you want to do. You want to learn to use your instincts to kind of work your way through things. It doesn't mean you know, jump just because you think that's what the answer is, but you learn to kind of trust your instincts because your observation is going to be more important in a lot of situations than a lot of other things. Look at that. There it is. So we are between -5 and -4, and we are between -1 and 0. So somewhere in between there is your solution. Again, later on we will figure out how to find that solution, but the beauty of it is if you were to take a test over this material sometime and it was multiple choice and you did not know how to find a solution, you could use this to say, well, I know it's between -5 and -4, between -1 and 0, so I could tell you that 6 is definitely not a solution. I could tell you that if they told me -4.7 is a solution, I can kind of believe it. If they told me -0.53 is a solution, I could probably believe it because it is between that range where I said they should be. Alright? In the end, actually, hold on. Yeah, there we go. So this is the part. In the end, be sure to adjust your answers to the problem. If you have an issue answering a question, please email me the picture of your problem with the solution shown. Before we close out the lesson, we need to revisit a process that I did not teach you yesterday, but you know, I'll try to make some amendment to that. But it was introduced or should have been introduced at yesterday's lesson. In that process, we are asked to find values that multiply to make one value and make another one. Hold on, I'm probably going to put all that together. Let me go back to my stuff and find it. There it is. So let me do this from here. Good thing I make all these videos in one day. So what I was supposed to end our last meeting with was this. Because next week you're going to start a process that requires you to be able to find values that multiply to make one number and add to make another. So I will move all of those questions over to the 4.2 homework, but again, I do suggest that you try to master this as much as possible because it is important. But 4.1 and 4.2 this week is one thing, but I'm introducing this, kind of pre-teaching it so that next week you at least have the skill to do it. Find the values that multiply to make 208 and add to make 29. Whenever you see this question, first off, we want to make what I call a factor tree, or a tree of 208. And all you have to do is 208 divided by 1, which we know to be 208. Divided by 2. Again, if you can do it in your head, fine, but I'm just showing you on calculator that even if you're not good with a calculator, you can still do it. 208 divided by 3 gives me a decimal, so 3 does not go in. Oops. I guess I can't type. And this is the hard part because you actually have to just keep going through and just typing in numbers and use common sense. 5 doesn't go into 208 because 5's end in 1 or 0 or 5. So 5 I shouldn't even check. But again, you're just kind of going through and checking it. I don't like these buttons. Divided by 7. Nope. Divided by 8. Yes. Divided by 9. I don't think so, because if it goes into 9, the digits should add up. 8 plus 2 is 10. That's not divisible by 9, so 9 doesn't go. 10 should end in a 0. 11, I'm pretty sure it's not, because I know the factors of it are. I'm silly. 12, and if you're wondering when we stop, pay attention to the answers that are coming out. The reason I'm doing this is so you know for yourself. If what I'm dividing by is bigger than the answer I have, it means I'm on the other side. Because remember, this should be my small side and my big side over here, and you want to do it that way. But again, once my answer matches or is bigger than the other side, that means I can stop. So 208 divided by 13, wow, 13, 16. Also notice that 16 is on this side, which means I shouldn't even have to really go past 15, because once I check 16, I'm already on the big side. But anyway, 208 divided by 14, nope. 208 divided by 15, nope. So this is my list. Here's the thing you got to pay attention to when it comes to this list, which is why I'm doing this before next week. And you want to try to get this at least under control by next week, because when we get into factoring, it is a beast, and you want to make sure you have this skill down. First off, it makes a positive 29. Alright? If it makes a positive 29, what I know about addition is that no matter what, the bigger number gets the sign. So if it's a positive 29, it means in my big side, which is why I always separate big from little, has to be positive. The second thing I know is that it makes a positive 208 when it multiplies. And the only way it makes a positive 208 is if everything is positive. So part of this process is not just making the table, but making sure you label it right. If it adds to make this number, your big side has to be positive. If it multiplies to make a positive, then both signs have to be the same. But again, that's part of the process you want to ask about. And which one of these makes 29? Would be 13 and 16. And so just to check, 13 times 16 is 208. 13 plus 16 is 29. Those are the two numbers we wanted. You know you did it right. Find the values, multiply to make 126, add to make negative 123. So again, we want 126. That's 1 times 126, 2 times 63. The digits divisible by 3, it divides. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 6 is 9, so 3 does go in there. 3 goes into 12 4 times with none left over, 42. The rule for 4, I believe, is if the last two digits are divisible by 4, it goes. 26 is not divisible by 4, but just to show you and prove, it does not work. 5 again ends in a 5 or a 0. 6, I think, does go because 6 goes into 12 twice. 6 goes into 6 once. 7, I don't know. But again, this is the hard part. All it does. 7 and 18. 8, the rule for 8, I think, is something different. I think it's the last three digits, so I'm not that good. 9. The rule for 9 is if the digits add up to something divisible by 9, you can divide it by 9. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 6 is 9, which means it should go into 9. Or 9 should go into it. 9 and 14. 10, I'm pretty sure, does not. 11. Again, pay attention to your answers coming out. And notice that I typed in 11. And I got 11 point something, which means these two numbers are about the same. I should not check 12 because that means that I'm on the big side. This is my list. And again, here's where you want to make sure you're ready. Multiply to make 126 adds to make negative 23. If it adds to make negative 23, it means that my big side, and make sure these are all the big numbers, is negative. But if it multiplies to make a positive 126, that means the signs have to be the same. Because the only way you multiply to get a positive is if the signs are the same. Which means the ones that make negative 23 are negative 9, negative 14. That brings us to today's sheet, which is what I was supposed to talk about. Is what happens whenever it multiplies to make a negative. If it multiplies to make a negative, start the same way. 72, ignore the negative for now. 72 is 1 times 72, 2 times 36, 3 times, that's 7, 8, 9. So 3 goes into 7 twice with 1 left over, which makes 12. 4, I believe, goes. 4 goes into 7 once with 3 left over. 32 would be 8. 5, no. 6, yes. 6 goes into 7 once with 1 left over, making that 12, which would be 2. 7, 8, nope, 8 times 9. And again, there's no need to check 9 because 9's on the big side. I did this number because it's easier to fill in. Here's what we need. It adds to make 6, a positive 6, which means my bigger number must be positive. That is why you want to make sure your table has a big side and a small side. But it multiplies to make negative 72, and the only way you multiply to make negative 72 is if the signs are different. So which one of these makes 6? Subtracting would be our part, would be negative 6 and 12. The skill will be important next week. Make sure you are ready for it when it pops up. Find two values that multiply to make negative 54 and add to make 15. Again, ignore that negative when you make your chart. 1 times 54, 2 times 27, 3 times 3 goes into 5 once with 2 left over. 24 would be 8. 4 I don't think goes. 5 no. 6 goes times 9. 7 no. 8 no. And that should be our list. So again, if you know it in your head, go ahead and go with it. But here's the thing. Here's the problem. And this is why you have to pay attention. 6 plus 9 is 15. And somebody's going to pick 6 and 9 because they're not going to do the full process. But you got to remember, it adds to make a positive 15, which means my big side is positive, which is great. But it multiplies to make negative 54, which means the only way I make a negative 54 is if these things are different. And so these two numbers are not your numbers because they don't add to make 15. The ones that make 15 is actually these two. Alright, so I will warn you that the next lesson might require energy depending on how much you remember from last year. Do your best to focus and wrap up this week. I know it says that, but I initially was giving you 3 lessons this week. But other than that, like I said, make sure you have this week's material down. You have the rest of this week to prepare for the quiz. Please make sure you try to take your quiz by Friday or Saturday. You do not want to have to work all the way up to Monday again, because once you get to that range, you are leaving yourself 0 room for error for the whole rest of the quarter. So while we're starting this quarter, please try your best to take your quiz by Friday. But again, hopefully you understand that by now, and that's it. So be sure to answer the question at the end of the video, and good luck.